This delicious drink they're enjoying has an incredible journey that connects 3 continents and shows us how the Ottoman Empire became a bridge between East and West.
Let's start at the very beginning. Coffee actually originated in the highlands of Ethiopia in a region called Kaffa, which is where we get the Turkish word kahve from, which became the English word coffee.
That's right. According to legend, an Ethiopian shepherd noticed his goats became energetic after eating certain berries. The knowledge of coffee eventually made its way across the Red Sea to Yemen, where Sufi mystics used it to stay alert during religious ceremonies.
From Yemen, coffee culture spread throughout the Ottoman Empire. By the 16th century, the first coffee house opened in Istanbul in 1554. Coffee houses, called kahvehane, became centers of intellectual life, political discourse, and cultural exchange.
The Ottomans essentially created cafe culture as we know it. These coffee houses were called School of the Wise, because people would gather to discuss poetry, politics, and philosophy.
The real turning point came in 1683 during the Second Siege of Vienna. When the Ottoman forces retreated, they left behind sacks and sacks of coffee beans. Most Europeans had never seen them before.
Franz George Kolchitsky was a Polish-Austrian merchant who had lived in the Ottoman Empire, and he knew what these mysterious beans were. He claimed the abandoned coffee as his reward for helping to defend Vienna.
Kolchitsky opened Vienna's first coffee house, but here's the genius part. He adapted the Turkish brewing method for European tastes. He filtered out the grounds, added milk and honey, creating what we recognize as the ancestor of the cappuccino.
This is a perfect example of cultural adaptation. The Ottomans introduced the product and the concept, but Europeans modified it to suit their preferences. This is how cultural exchange really works. It's not just copying, it's adapting and innovating.
Coffee's popularity spread throughout Europe from Vienna, and by the 1700s, coffee houses were everywhere. Lloyd's of London started as a coffee house, and they became centers of business, journalism, and intellectual life in cities like London, Paris, and Amsterdam.
But coffee was just one part of a much larger cultural phenomenon. The Ottoman Empire's wealth, sophistication, and exotic appeal created what we call Turkeri, a European fascination with all things Turkish.
Turkery wasn't just about copying Ottoman styles, it was about Europeans reimagining Turkish culture through their own lens. You see it in fashion, with Turkish-inspired robes and turbans becoming popular among European aristocrats.
Take music, for example. Mozart wrote the Abduction from the Seraglio and the Rondo alla Turca in his Piano Sonata No. 11. European composers were fascinated by Ottoman military music, especially the Janissary bands with their cymbals, triangles, and drums.
In art and architecture, you see Turkish influences everywhere. Look at Brighton Pavilion in England. It's basically a European architect's fantasy of what an Ottoman palace should look like, or the Turkish baths that became popular across Europe.
What's fascinating is that this cultural influence worked in reverse too. The Ottoman Empire was incredibly cosmopolitan. We had Greek musicians, Armenian architects, Jewish merchants, and European advisors. The palace kitchens served dishes from across the empire.
This brings us to an important point about soft power. The Ottoman Empire didn't just project military strength, it projected cultural sophistication. European diplomats who visited Istanbul were amazed by the luxury, the gardens, and the elaborate court ceremonies.
The Ottomans' court etiquette influenced European diplomatic protocol. Elaborate gift-giving ceremonies, the formal audiences with the Sultan, these became models that European courts adapted.
Even our carpets became symbols of wealth and status in Europe. You see them in countless European paintings from the Renaissance onward. They were so prized that they appear in portraits of kings and merchants as symbols of prosperity. This is Hünkar beğendi, which literally means the Sultan liked it. It's an eggplant puree served with meat stew, and its creation tells us a lot about how European tastes influenced Ottoman palace cuisine. So this dish we just made has a legendary origin story. It's said that when Empress Eugenie of France visited Sultan Abdulaziz In 1869, the palace chefs wanted to create something special that would impress her European palate.
They cook a traditional Ottoman ingredient, roasted eggplant, but prepared it using French cooking techniques, making a bechamel-style sauce, incorporating European methods of cream and butter preparation.
And apparently, Empress Eugenie loved it so much that the Sultan himself tried it and gave his approval, hence the name The Sultan Liked It. But this story represents something much bigger than just one dish.
By the 19th century, the Ottoman Empire was actively looking westward for modernization and reform. This period, known as the Tanzimat's reform, saw massive European influence on Ottoman society.
The palace itself became a showcase for European influence. Sultan Abdulmajid I built the Dolmabahce Palace in the 1850s, which looks nothing like traditional Ottoman architecture. It's pure European Baroque and neoclassical style.
The Sultan's personal life changed too. Instead of traditional Ottoman robes, sultans started wearing European-style military uniforms and frock coats. The Ottoman court adopted European etiquette, European furniture, and European music.
Take Sultan Abdul Hamid II. He was a skilled carpenter who made furniture in European styles. He had a European-trained orchestra that played Western classical music.
This wasn't just about fashion or food, it was about power and survival. The Ottoman Empire was facing pressure from European powers, and the leadership believed that adopting European technology, education, and culture was essential for keeping up.
In the military, they brought in European advisors to modernize the army. They established European-style military academies, adopted European uniforms and drill techniques.
The famous Janissary Corps, known for their traditional ways, were abolished as well.
Education saw huge changes as well. Robert College was founded in Istanbul in 1863, an American institution that brought Western educational methods. The Ottoman government established modern schools based on French and German models.
European languages became essential for advancement. French especially became the language of diplomacy and education among the Ottoman elite. Many Ottoman intellectuals studied in Paris, London, or Vienna.
But here's what's fascinating. This wasn't just blind copying. Ottoman intellectuals adapted European ideas for their own context. They translated European scientific and political texts into Turkish and Arabic. But they also critiqued it and modified these ideas.
Take the Ottoman Constitution of 1876. It was inspired by European constitutional monarchies, but it was adapted for Ottoman conditions. It had to balance traditional Islamic governments with modern parliamentary systems.
In literature, Ottoman writers started experimenting with European novel forms and romantic poetry, but they wrote about Ottoman themes, Ottoman characters, Ottoman social issues. They used European literary tools to tell distinctly Ottoman stories.
The interesting thing about this dish is that it represents successful cultural fusion. It's not trying to be French food, it's Ottoman food that incorporates French techniques to create something entirely new.
The techniques we're using here, the roux, the way we're preparing this cream sauce, these actually come from French culinary traditions that entered the Ottoman palace kitchens.
This is different from the coffee example we discussed earlier. With coffee, the Ottomans introduced something completely new to Europe. But with dishes like this, we see the Ottomans adapting their own traditions using foreign influences.
We see in the 19th century Ottoman Empire is what historians call defensive modernization, adopting European methods not because they loved European culture, but because they needed to compete with European powers.
And this has had mixed results. Some reforms strengthened the empire, like the telegraph system, modern banking, and professional bureaucracy. But others created tension between traditionalists and modernizers.